Hello. Okay. Last thing about Greece for now. We'll come back to things. But the last thing about Greece is Alexander the Great. You've all heard of him, yeah? Alexander, there he is, the Great. Look at his dates. He didn't live very long, did he? No, he died young. It's kind of sad. It's kind of crazy to think like somebody as awesome as Alexander the Great. Like I'm already older than him. It's weird. Anyway, Alexander the Great. This is him right here, a bust of him. Okay. Do you remember this map? We haven't looked at it in a while. Okay. Alexander the Great isn't actually Greek. What? He's actually from a kingdom north of Greece, right here, called Macedonia. Macedonia. Kingdom of Macedon. Macedonia. Macedonia and Greece, of course, they have cultural crossover. They have trade. They get along just fine. They're fine, okay? But they're not actually the same kingdom. Just a little side note. That being said, Alexander the Great. Let me go down to good old Alex. There we go. There we go. Alexander the Great is Macedonian, but he basically grew up in Greece. He was educated by like brilliant Greek intellectuals. He was trained how to fight. He knew the phalanx of Sparta. I feel like if Athens and Sparta were to join together, you would have this amazingly strong military city state. Sorry, I was waving at somebody in the hall. Anyway, you'd have this really, really, really strong military city state that is also intellectual. It's not where you have like the military guys and the smart guys. They're mixed. They would have been awesome if they could have joined together. And I feel like Alexander is kind of the mixing of both. He's highly intelligent, big time intellectual, big time smart, great at strategy, but he's also this warrior beast. And again, he knows the phalanx of Sparta. He's this military genius. He's pretty impressive. And his father, the king of Macedonia. He wants to take over Greece. So Alexander is sent to like lead a group of men, okay? Unfortunately, King Philip dies. Bye. Which makes Alexander the new king of Macedon, okay? Let me scoot this over. And he's just in love with Greece. That's his heart. It's like, I'm American and I'm proud to be American, but my heart is in Europe. You know? I feel like that's kind of how Alexander might have been. He's proud that he's Macedonian, but he loves Greece. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to finish taking it over. And he does. But he doesn't stop there. He goes on. And I know these names down here, you're like, okay, I don't know what Mesopotamia is. I'll show you. India up to the Indus River. Okay. Although you should know that from AP World. But look at this map. If you need to pause this now, pause it, because I'm not going to wait. Oh, that's Greece. Just kidding. Look at this map. Oh, I left Egypt off. Oh, no, it says right there. Just kidding. Okay, look. If you look at this, stop moving. If you look at this map up closer, this little tiny thing right here is Greece. Right here. Macedonia is up here. Greece is over here. Okay. Again, city of Troy's over here. There's the island of Crete down there. Everything in this blue purpley color. For the time, that is huge. We talked about when the Persian Empire was like attacking Greece. The Persian Empire was like this. Alexander now has Persia, as well as Greece, as well as Macedonia, Egypt, and he goes all the way to the Indus River over here. All the way over here. That's impressive. How old was he? I don't know, that's math. He's in his 30s. All of this in his 30s. Like, that's crazy. And when you look at this on a bigger map so that you can get a bigger picture of what this really looks like, that's huge. So you can get your bearings. Africa's down here. Look at Greece. It's so little. Look at this empire. Alexander wanted to keep going. He wanted to come in and take India. I mean, he already took India up to the Indus River. What you're seeing in red right here, do you see this red line right here? That's the Indus River. The reds, rivers, the Nile. We don't really talk about these in this class, but you have the Tigris and the Euphrates here in Mesopotamia. He wanted to go in and take India, okay? All of this. And then he wanted to come this way and take all of this. Y'all, that's China. That was his great plan. Was to take everything from Greece this way, Persia, India, into China. It just didn't happen, did it? While he was here in the Indus, the men had been gone, like his men had been gone for years, taking over all of this land. Guys, it's not easy. Like I know when we talked about World War II last year, that's like where we left off with things last year. You were having the Nazis like taking over things in 2 seconds. I know. I mean, not really, but you know what I mean. So in your mind, war's really fast. No. Mm-mm. You have to travel there, first of all. And then this is still like hand to hand, well, not hand to hand, but sword to sword combat. We don't have gunpowder happening at this point in time yet. Like we've backed up in time. We're back to old school swords and what are they called? Spears. I'm doing this for spears. Whatever. We're back to old school weapons. This took a long time. And so his men are like, bro, we've come all the way here. We want to break and we want to go home. And he's like, no, you can't go home. We're like halfway there. I'm pointing at it. You can't see what I'm pointing at. We're just halfway there. We're almost there. We got to go. And his men are like, mm-mm. And so they're tired. They want to rest. So they do. They kind of hang out here in the Indus River area for a while. But while they're there, Alexander gets sick. He ends up with a really high fever. His men are a little concerned about using some of the Eastern medicines. They want to get him back to Greece so that they can use Greek medicines. So they get Alexander and they start taking him back. Again, this is not a fast process at all. And when Alexander is in this area here, it's not that low, just kidding. It's over here somewhere. The city of Babylon, you might have heard of it. He is so sick. He's like in and out of consciousness. He's delirious. He's just a mess. And his fever is really, really high. So they stop in Babylon, again, in this general area over here. And he ends up dying. Uh-oh. I'm trying to move the screen. When he ends up dying, did I do a picture? I didn't. That's okay. Let me go back then. Okay. When he ends up dying, the empire it doesn't separate completely, but it kind of falls apart. It really was his empire. Okay. However, what they do is they have like governors of sections. Okay. So you'll have like the governor to Persia, the Greek governor who's going to be in charge of this, the Greek governor in charge of Egypt. That's the most famous one. His name is Ptolemy. We'll talk about one of his descendants later when we get to Rome. You've all heard of her, Cleopatra. But we'll get there. But he leaves all of these like governors in charge to try and kind of hold together the empire. No, they all kind of do their own thing. But still, what is important with Alexander taking over is that Alexander absolutely loved Greek culture. Here, I'll just put my head down here for now, and I'll talk about this at the top, and then I'll move up, okay? He loved Greece. He loved Greek culture. And so one of the things that he really wanted to do as he was taking over places is he wanted to spread and share Greek culture all over the place. This is called Hellenistic culture. Hellenistic. It has nothing to do with like Helen of Troy. Nothing at all. Hellenistic is like Greek. Okay? He's spreading Greek culture. So the idea of Hellenistic culture is this mixing of Greek culture, Greek learning, Greek education, Greek architecture, Greek art to the non-Greek world. You'll have all of a sudden in the middle of India a random Greek style building. And it seems so out of place. And it's like, why is this here? Because Alexander. You have cities all over the place. Oh my gosh, there's so many. We could look it up, but I'm not going to. Called Alexandria, called Alexandretta, the city of Alexander, all over the place, in the Middle East, in Egypt, all over the place. Why? Alexander set them up. You're going to have places where Alexander would go and he was like, oh my gosh, y'all don't know half of what we know. So he would send teachers to go like educate people. He would send artists to go teach. He would send architects to build structures all over the place. Greece, oh, just kidding. Egypt, all of a sudden, during this time period, has column buildings all of a sudden, which is a very Greek style. It's the spreading of culture all across this entire empire here. And it feels out of place, really, truly. You see a building like this. Oh, wait, that didn't work. You see a building like, un momento bitte, like this, right here, in the middle of India. What? It feels out of place, but it's that mixing of Greek culture with non-Greek culture. Hellenistic. And we talked about this a lot last year whenever we talked about trade, especially early trade on that old school Silk Road. Let me show you so you can get a little bit of a visual. That old school Silk Road, guys, watch the mouse. It comes this way, the Southern Silk Road. And then you had the Northern Silk Road, avoiding the deserts here and avoiding the Himalaya in the south. And then once we have the Mongolians come in, you have the far Northern Silk Road, but we're not there yet. Yeah. So all of this along the old Silk Road, Alexander's trading. He doesn't even know it, and he's not doing it on purpose. It's just that he loves his culture and he wants to spread it. And this is a culture that is intellectual. That is not to say there's mathematicians in Egypt. You should know, you should remember, you should know this. Dar al-Islam, once Islam comes in the 600s, 700s, they're going to be like mega smart. Okay, so it's not that Greece is the only place that's intellectual. This is pretty early though, 300s BC. The people of India were intellectual, big time. Heck yeah. China, they were ahead if you remember. But you have these pockets of areas, and he's spreading these ideas all over the place along that old school Silk Road. Let's go back here. And especially that includes education and art. The art, you've actually been like looking at it the whole time. You just may not have realized it. When you see all of these sculptures, all of these white marble sculptures, these guys. Now, I understand this is a relief, but that's okay. These guys. You have all of these white marble sculptures. That's art. Now, y'all, they have paintings too. I showed you this already, which is typical art form on their pottery. So, I mean, they have like art, like paintings and stuff too. But especially important to the Greeks is getting the human form correct. Human characteristics were important to the Greeks. We could assume that this is really truly what Eratosthenes looked like, because we know that the Greeks were obsessed with making people look like themselves. Now, I've had kids ask before, so does he have a scar right here? It's probably not a scar. It's probably where this statue got dinged. It got hit with something. We talked about this with, it's the Socrates scar. I mean, the Plato scar. It drives me crazy that I can't, there we go, move this easily. We talked about it with this one already. That's probably not a scar. It's probably the rock, or it's probably where it got dinged. This right here has definitely been fixed. But we can assume, other than that this might be what these people look like. Because again, they want to have physical form be accurate. They also want, here we go. They also want their architecture, and I already talked about this, but they want their architecture to be in proportion. You'll see that with Greek statues too. The people will be in proportion. I don't know, maybe they all just naturally were, but you'll see it that way with proportion. You don't have like, I don't know, giant weird things on people's bodies. I'm going to change this. So if you need to pause it, pause it. As far as the architecture, we've talked about this a little bit already. They're using the white marble because that's what they have naturally. Again, if you look at this picture here, just from a different angle, this is natural. This rock right here is natural. Now, please remember this down here is Roman, not Greek, but the rock that it's built on, that's what's there. So the white marble is just because it's what's there. Um, they want this proportion where things, they're in proportion. I don't know. They're in proportion. You don't have like a giant tower sticking up, like we'll see in Europe later. You don't have like all these weird things sticking off of it. Everything fits. Everything's geometric. You've got these columns. And again, rectangular or square, not arches. I can't do an arch on the video. Arches are Roman, but we'll get there. Okay. Now they did paint these. They were painted. And I know when we look at them, we're like, yeah, they're all just white, which I actually love them that way. But they weren't back then. We know that they weren't. This is the same building. Okay. We know that they weren't because there's small traces of color, paint, still like left on these things. You can see the color that it used to be. This building right here is called the Parthenon. The Parthenon. The Parthenon is one of their like big deal important temples. The way that it used to look, is like this. I'll go back to that other picture in a minute. You do have these white columns here, but we know it's painted. Look at this. Yellows, blues, reds. We know that the top was painted. The inside, the ceiling is painted. You've got this huge, giant statue of Athena. And then you have this reflecting pool. I'll come back to that, I promise. That's what all was in here. I told you already, like at the very beginning, this is a seismic area. You have earthquakes all the time. There was a couple of huge volcanoes. So I mean, these buildings, like they're falling down. And I've had kids in the past that are like, "Why don't we rebuild it?" No, no, you don't change things. You don't fix it. Leave it. The way you found it is how you leave it. And I understand. Like I've had kids say that seems disrespectful to me. I understand the mindset. But if we change things, think of it like a crime scene. If we go in and clean up the crime scene, because it's disrespectful to have, I don't know, blood everywhere. We've destroyed things that could be used in the future to discover things. We don't redo things. We leave it. There are still times when, I don't know, historians, archaeologists, whatever, will run to the Parthenon and look for stuff. You leave things alone. If people had repainted the Parthenon, would we know what colors it was originally painted? Well, yes, if they colored them the same color, if they colored them the same color. Otherwise, we wouldn't. So yeah, I totally understand when kids, and I get this question a lot, when they're like, "Oh, it's disrespectful to leave it. We should fix it." I understand. I hear you. I see what you're saying. I understand to a degree, but no, you leave it. And then in the future, it might tell us something in the future that we don't have the technology to know yet. But if we mess with things and we change things and we fix things, we might destroy things that we don't even know are just waiting to be discovered. So yeah, we leave them alone. Okay. The way that this up here, this whole thing this whole thing up here used to look, okay, this is what it looks like today, but the way it was laid out historically was like this. This whole entire area is called the Acropolis. You see Parthenon here, and it's this huge temple complex. Oops. And then you have like this section where all of those guys, like the philosophers and thinkers and stuff, would hang out down here, the Agora. Um, but yeah, that was what the whole like temple area looked like. It's amazing to me to think that like they built all of this without any of like our modern stuff. And even when you go farther back than Greece, y'all, there's stuff that's older than ancient Greece. And they did it without like it's just crazy to think about. Without all of our modern stuff, it's just really cool to think about. Anyway, do these buildings remind you of anything? Just look. Hopefully you've already thought of it. In class, kids always shout out the answer. It should remind you of our government buildings in America. Our White House um, in Austin, the buildings in the state capitol. You see a lot of our governmental buildings reflecting Greek style. That's kind of to pay homage to the Greeks, to show them respect. We took their form of government, democracy, republic, but democracy. It's a republic, but whatever. We took that idea and we ran with it. And so our buildings looking sort of like theirs is a form of respect to them. It's a form of like I don't know, like a throwback to ancient Greece. Like, thanks, man. You know. So anyway, you guys, Greece is done. We're going now to Rome. All right, that's the stylist. Bye. Go to Rome.